The house was too quiet when Jasmine walked through the front door, her 5-year-old son Tyler's hand clasped firmly in hers. She had noticed the silence the moment she turned the key, but it wasn't until she stepped into the living room that the full weight of abandonment hit her like a physical blow. The family photos that had lined the mantelpiece for 7 years were gone. The leather recliner where her husband David spent his evenings was missing. Even the coffee table they had picked out together during their 2nd year of marriage had vanished, leaving only faint impressions in the carpet where its legs had rested. But it was the note on the kitchen counter that made her legs give out. Scrawled in David's familiar handwriting on a piece of yellow legal paper, the words seemed to blur and sharpen with each reading. Jasmine, I've moved to Spain with Rebecca. The divorce papers are with my lawyer. I've taken what's mine. Don't try to contact me. David. That was it. 7 years of marriage, a child, a life built together, reduced to 4 sentences that couldn't even fill half a page. Tyler tugged on her sleeve, his little voice cutting through the shock. Mama, where's Daddy? Where's our TV? She looked down at her son, his wide brown eyes reflecting confusion and the first hints of fear. The 65-inch television that had dominated their living room wall was gone, along with the sound system, the gaming console, and even Tyler's favorite beanbag chair. Daddy had to go away for work, baby, she managed, her voice steady despite the earthquake happening inside her chest. It was a lie, but Tyler didn't need to know that his father had abandoned them both for a woman Jasmine had never even heard of. Rebecca. The name felt foreign and sharp in her mind, like swallowing glass. She moved through the house methodically, Tyler trailing behind her, both of them cataloging the missing pieces of their life. The master bedroom had been stripped of David's belongings, but also of things that had belonged to both of them. Their wedding china was gone. The expensive cookware set they had received as a wedding gift had disappeared. Even her grandmother's antique jewelry box, which had sat on her dresser for years, was nowhere to be found. Mama, my iPad is gone, Tyler announced from his bedroom, his voice small and confused. Jasmine rushed to his room to find that while his clothes and toys remained, anything electronic or valuable had been removed. The tablet they had given him for his birthday. The educational gaming system. Even the digital camera they had bought him to encourage his interest in photography. The garage told the rest of the story. David's BMW was gone, naturally, but so was her car. In its place sat a beat-up Honda Civic that must have been 15 years old, with a note tucked under the windshield wiper. This will get you around. The payments on your car were too high. D. She stared at the rusted metal and cracked windshield, feeling something cold and hard forming in her chest where her heart used to be. Back inside, she found Tyler sitting on his bed, holding his favorite stuffed elephant, tears streaming down his cheeks. When is Daddy coming back? He asked, and Jasmine knew she couldn't keep lying to him. But she also couldn't tell him the truth, not yet, not when she was barely holding herself together. I don't think Daddy is coming back, sweetie, she said softly, sitting beside him and pulling him into her arms. But you know what? We're going to be okay. You and me were a team now. That night, after Tyler had finally fallen asleep in her bed because his own felt too big and scary, Jasmine sat at her laptop and began to piece together the extent of David's betrayal. Their joint bank account had been cleaned out except for $300. Their savings account was empty. The credit cards had been maxed out with cash advances. When she called the mortgage company, she discovered that David had somehow managed to refinance the house without her knowledge and had taken out all the equity. She was broke. Not just broke, but in debt. The mortgage payment alone was more than she made in a month at her part-time job at the community center. David had left her with nothing but bills, a broken-down car, and a 5-year-old son who kept asking when Daddy was coming home. The lawyer she called the next morning confirmed her worst fears. David had been planning this for months, maybe longer. He had systematically moved money around, sold assets, and positioned himself to take everything while leaving her with nothing. The divorce papers he had filed painted her as an unfit mother and claimed she had been having an affair, which was laughable since she barely had time to shower most days, let alone carry on a relationship. How is this legal? She asked the lawyer, a tired-looking woman named Patricia Chin who had agreed to see her on short notice. Technically it's not, Patricia replied, shuffling through the papers. But proving what he did and getting any of it back will take time and money. Money you don't have, according to what you've told me. Jasmine left the lawyer's office feeling more defeated than she had thought possible. She picked Tyler up from her sister's house, where she had left him during the appointment, and tried to figure out what to do next. The house would be foreclosed on within months. She couldn't afford a lawyer to fight David's lies. She barely had enough money to feed herself and Tyler for the next week. That evening, as she was putting Tyler to bed, he looked up at her with those serious brown eyes that reminded her so much of her own father. "Mama, are we poor now?" The question broke something inside her that she hadn't even known was still intact. "Maybe a little bit, baby. But we're going to figure it out. Will I still be able to go to school?" "Yes, sweetie. You'll always be able to go to school." "Will we have to move?" She wanted to lie to him, to promise him that everything would stay the same, but she was tired of lies. "We might have to move, Tyler. But wherever we go, we'll be together. That's what matters." After he fell asleep, Jasmine sat in the empty living room and let herself cry for the first time since finding the note. She cried for the marriage she had thought was solid. She cried for the future she had planned that would never happen. She cried for Tyler, who didn't deserve to have his life turned upside down because his father was a selfish coward. But mostly she cried because she felt so stupid. The signs had been there, hadn't they? The late nights at work that had become more frequent. The business trips that seemed to multiply. The way he had become distant and distracted over the past few months. She had attributed it to stress at his job, but now she realized he had been planning his escape while she was making dinner and helping Tyler with his homework and believing in their family. When the tears finally stopped, something else took their place. Something harder and sharper and infinitely more useful than grief. She wasn't going to let David destroy her. She wasn't going to let him win. She didn't know how yet, but she was going to find a way to build a better life for herself and Tyler. A life that didn't need David or his money or his lies. She pulled out her laptop and began making lists. What she needed to do immediately. What she needed to do in the next month. What she needed to do to survive. It wasn't much of a plan yet, but it was a beginning. And sometimes, a beginning was all you needed to start over. The house might be empty, but she wasn't empty. She was angry and hurt and scared, but she wasn't empty. She was still Tyler's mother. She was still herself. And that was going to have to be enough. The next morning brought a parade of humiliations that felt designed to break what little spirit Jasmine had left. The electricity had been turned off sometime during the night, which she discovered when Tyler's nightlight didn't come on and the refrigerator sat silent and dark. When she called the electric company, she learned that David had somehow managed to remove her name from the account and had stopped payment on the last 3 bills. "But this is my house too," she explained to the customer service representative, standing in her cold kitchen while Tyler ate cereal with warm milk from a carton that wouldn't stay cold much longer. "I understand your frustration, ma'am, but without your name on the account, I can't discuss the details with you. You'll need to start a new account and pay a deposit of $450 before we can restore service." $450. She had $300 to her name, and that had to cover food and gas and whatever other disasters were waiting for her. She hung up the phone and looked at Tyler, who was watching her with the too serious expression he had been wearing since yesterday. "Are we going to have lights today, Mama?" "We're working on it, baby." Another lie, but a small one. She was working on it, even if working on it meant she had no idea what she was doing. The water was next to go, which happened while Tyler was getting dressed for school. The shower sputtered and died, leaving him with soap in his hair and Jasmine scrambling to rinse it out with bottled water from the pantry. The gas company called while she was trying to make this work, informing her that service would be discontinued at noon unless immediate payment was received. She managed to get Tyler cleaned up and dressed, then loaded him into the ancient Honda Civic that wheezed and rattled like it was taking its last breath. The car had no heat, which Tyler found fascinating rather than uncomfortable, fogging up the windows with his breath and drawing pictures in the condensation. "Look, Mama, I drew a house," he said, showing her a lopsided square with a triangle on top. "That's where we're going to live next." "It's beautiful, sweetie." She meant it. His resilience amazed her. While she was falling apart inside, he was adapting to their new reality with the flexibility that only children possessed. It made her love him more and hate David more in equal measure. After dropping Tyler at school, Jasmine drove to the community center where she worked 3 days a week teaching computer classes to senior citizens. It wasn't much of a job, barely 20 hours a week at $12 an hour, but it was something. Her supervisor, Mrs. Rodriguez, took one look at her face and immediately offered her coffee and a chair in the break room. "Honey, what happened? You look like you haven't slept in a week." Jasmine found herself spilling the entire story to this woman she barely knew outside of work. Mrs. Rodriguez listened without interruption, occasionally shaking her head or making small sounds of sympathy and outrage. When Jasmine finished, Mrs. Rodriguez was quiet for a long moment. "How can I help?" she asked simply. "I don't know. I don't even know what I need help with first. Let's start with the immediate problems. You need electricity and water. You need food. You need to figure out housing. Everything else can wait. Mrs. Rodriguez made some phone calls while Jasmine taught her morning computer class to a group of retirees who were learning to video chat with their grandchildren. The familiar routine of explaining how to use a mouse and navigate websites was soothing, a reminder that some things were still normal and manageable. During her lunch break, Mrs. Rodriguez handed her a list of phone numbers and addresses. There are programs that can help with utilities, she explained. Emergency assistance funds. Food banks. Housing assistance. It's not going to solve everything, but it might buy you some time to figure out your next step. The afternoon was spent making phone calls and filling out forms and explaining her situation to a series of social workers and program coordinators. Each conversation required her to relive David's abandonment, to admit that she had been left with nothing, to ask for help from strangers. It was exhausting and humiliating, but it was also productive. By the time she picked Tyler up from school, she had managed to secure emergency assistance for her electric bill and had an appointment the next day to apply for food assistance. It wasn't much, but it was progress. Tyler chattered about his day as they drove home, telling her about the art project he had made and the book his teacher had read to the class. Mrs. Patterson asked me if everything was okay at home, he said as they pulled into their driveway. I told her you and me are a team now and we're figuring things out. Jasmine felt her throat tighten. What did she say to that? She said teams are good. She said sometimes the best teams are small ones. That evening, with the electricity restored and the immediate crisis temporarily averted, Jasmine sat down to really look at her situation. She made lists of everything she owned, everything she owed, everything she needed. The numbers were stark and depressing, but they were also honest. She was starting from zero, but zero was still a starting point. She called her sister Angela, who lived 2 states away and had always been the practical one in the family. Angela listened to the whole story with increasing outrage, interrupting only to ask questions or to mutter curses about David that would have made their grandmother wash her mouth out with soap. You can come stay with us, Angela offered immediately. Marcus and I have plenty of room and Tyler would love playing with his cousins. I appreciate it, but I can't run away. This is Tyler's home. His school, his friends. I need to figure out how to make this work. Then what do you need from me? I need to know that if everything falls apart, we have somewhere to go. Just knowing that helps. You've got it? Always. But Jazz, you need to think about fighting back. David can't just steal everything and walk away. There have to be consequences. After they hung up, Jasmine thought about Angela's words. Fighting back sounded good in theory, but it required resources she didn't have. Still, the idea planted itself in her mind like a seed. Maybe she couldn't fight David right now, but that didn't mean she never would. She spent the rest of the evening researching online, learning about divorce law and asset division and what options she might have. Most of it required lawyers and money she didn't possess, but knowledge was free. She could educate herself, prepare herself, even if she couldn't act yet. Tyler fell asleep easily that night, worn out from the excitement of his first day in their new reality. Jasmine sat beside his bed for a while, watching him sleep and making promises to herself. She would find a way to provide for him. She would find a way to give him stability and security. And someday, somehow, she would find a way to make David pay for what he had done to them. She didn't know how yet, but she was beginning to believe it was possible. For the first time since finding that note on the kitchen counter, she went to sleep thinking about the future instead of mourning the past. It was a small shift, but it felt significant. Like the first crack in a wall that would eventually come tumbling down. The food bank was located in the basement of a Methodist church across town, and Jasmine had never felt more aware of her pride than she did walking down those concrete steps with Tyler's hand in hers. She had dressed carefully for this expedition, choosing clothes that were clean and neat but not too nice, not wanting to appear as if she were taking advantage of charity she didn't deserve. The volunteers were kind without being pitying, which helped. An older man with gentle eyes and calloused hands helped her fill out the intake forms while Tyler colored at a small table set up for children. The questions were invasive but necessary, documenting the collapse of her financial life in boxes and check marks. First time? The volunteer asked, and when Jasmine nodded, he smiled. It gets easier. Not the situation necessarily, but this part. Asking for help when you need it. They loaded her cart with canned goods, pasta, rice, peanut butter, bread, and fresh vegetables that local grocery stores had donated. Tyler helped carry the lighter bags, proud to be useful, chattering to the volunteers about school and his favorite foods. His ease with the situation made Jasmine realize that maybe shame was a luxury she couldn't afford. Can we come back next week? Tyler asked as they loaded the groceries into the Honda. If we need to, yes. I liked helping carry things. And Mr. James said they always need people to help sort food on Saturdays. Driving home, Jasmine found herself thinking about Tyler's words. Maybe there was a way to turn this situation into something positive for him, to teach him about community and helping others instead of just about loss and abandonment. It wasn't the lesson plan she had imagined for his childhood, but it might be a valuable one anyway. The afternoon brought a phone call from Patricia Chin, the lawyer. "I've been thinking about your case," she said without preamble. "I might be willing to take it on contingency, meaning you don't pay unless we recover something significant." "What made you change your mind?" "I did some digging into your husband's finances. He was very clever about hiding what he was doing but not clever enough. There are some irregularities that might work in your favor. Can you come in tomorrow afternoon?" Jasmine made arrangements for Tyler to stay with Mrs. Rodriguez after school and spent the next day at Patricia's office, going through bank statements and financial records that painted a picture of systematic theft. David had been moving money around for months, transferring funds to accounts Jasmine had never known existed, selling stocks and bonds without her knowledge or consent. "The good news is that we can prove he defrauded you," Patricia explained. "The bad news is that he's in Spain now, which complicates things significantly. But not all of his assets are overseas. He still owns part of his business here, and there are some investments he couldn't liquidate quickly." "What does that mean for me?" "It means we have options. It's going to take time and there are no guarantees, but we might be able to recover some of what he stole. Maybe not everything, but enough to help you get back on your feet." For the first time in days, Jasmine felt something that resembled hope. It was fragile and tentative, but it was there. She signed the papers that made Patricia her attorney and walked out of the office feeling like she was finally fighting back instead of just surviving. That evening, she called the mortgage company to explain her situation and try to work out a payment plan. The customer service representative was sympathetic but not encouraging. Without David's income, there was no way Jasmine could afford the monthly payments, even if she worked full-time. "Your best option might be to sell the house," the representative suggested. "If you can sell it quickly, you might be able to pay off the mortgage and have something left over." Jasmine looked around the living room where Tyler was building an elaborate castle with his blocks, humming to himself as he worked. This was the only home he had ever known. His height marks were penciled on the kitchen door frame. His artwork covered the refrigerator. His friends lived in this neighborhood, and his school was 5 minutes away. But keeping the house wasn't worth destroying their future. She called a real estate agent that night and scheduled an appointment for the weekend. If selling the house was what it took to give them a fresh start, then that's what she would do. The real estate agent, an energetic woman named Linda Carter, walked through the house with a practiced eye, taking notes and measurements. "The market is good right now," she told Jasmine. "You should be able to sell quickly, especially if you're willing to price it competitively. I need to sell it as quickly as possible. Then we can make that happen. I'd suggest listing it below market value to generate immediate interest. You'll still make enough to pay off the mortgage and have some money left over for a fresh start." That night, Jasmine sat Tyler down for a conversation she had been dreading. "We're going to sell our house, sweetie. We're going to find somewhere new to live." Tyler looked up from his coloring book, considering this news with the seriousness he brought to all important matters. "Will it be a nice place?" "I hope so. We'll look for somewhere that feels like home." "Will I still go to the same school?" "For now, yes. We'll try to find somewhere in the same area." "Will Daddy know where to find us?" The question hit her like a physical blow. She had been so focused on the practical aspects of their situation that she hadn't considered how Tyler was processing his father's absence. "Do you want Daddy to find us?" Tyler was quiet for a long moment, his crayon moving in careful circles on the paper. "I want him to be sorry he left. But I don't want him to come back if he's going to leave again." The wisdom in his 5-year-old assessment of the situation amazed her. "I think you're very smart, Tyler. Mama, are you sad that Daddy left?" She considered lying, giving him some sanitized version that would protect his feelings. But Tyler deserved honesty as much as she could give him. "I'm sad that he hurt us. But I'm not sad that it's just you and me now. I like being a team with you." "Me too. We're good at being a team." 3 days later, Linda called with news that the house had received multiple offers. "There's a couple who wants to close quickly and they're offering full asking price. If you're ready to move fast, we can have this wrapped up in 2 weeks. 2 weeks. It seemed impossibly fast and not fast enough at the same time. Jasmine accepted the offer and then spent the next few days searching for apartments they could afford. The options were limited and depressing, mostly small places in neighborhoods she wouldn't have considered before David's betrayal changed everything. She found a two-bedroom apartment in a complex that was clean but tired, with thin walls and cheaper fixtures. It was a significant step down from their house, but it was affordable and safe, and Tyler would be able to stay at his current school. She put down a deposit and signed a lease, officially closing the door on the life she had built with David. The day before they moved, Tyler asked if he could walk through their old house one more time. They went from room to room, Tyler pointing out favorite spots and sharing memories. In his bedroom, he stood in the center of the room and turned in a slow circle. "I'm taking a picture with my brain," he announced. "So I won't forget. What do you want to remember most?" "The way the light comes in my window in the morning. And how the stairs squeak on the third step. And where we measured how tall I am on the kitchen door." That night, Jasmine carefully sanded down the doorframe and cut out the section with Tyler's height marks. It was a small thing, but it felt important. Some parts of their old life were worth preserving, even if everything else had to be left behind. As she packed their belongings into boxes, she found herself thinking about the future in ways she hadn't been able to before. For the first time since David left, she wasn't just surviving each day. She was planning for what came next. It felt like progress. The apartment was smaller than it had seemed when empty, but Tyler approached it like an adventure. He ran from room to room, his footsteps echoing on the bare floors, calling out discoveries. "Mama, my room has 2 windows. Mama, the kitchen sink is really deep. Mama, there's a playground right outside." Jasmine tried to see it through his eyes instead of her own. Where she saw thin walls and outdated fixtures, he saw possibilities. Where she saw a significant downgrade from their former life, he saw a new place to call home. His optimism was infectious, and she found herself getting caught up in the process of making the space theirs. They had sold most of their furniture with the house, keeping only what they truly needed and what had sentimental value. Tyler's bed, the kitchen table where he did his homework, the rocking chair where she had nursed him as a baby and still read him bedtime stories. Everything else was either sold, donated, or left behind. "It looks bigger with less stuff," Tyler observed, and he was right. The apartment felt spacious and clean, full of potential rather than weighted down by the past. Mrs. Rodriguez arrived that afternoon with a casserole and a carload of donations from the community center. "People heard about your situation," she explained, bringing in bags of children's clothes, books, and household items. Everyone wanted to help. Jasmine was overwhelmed by the generosity of people she barely knew. There were school supplies for Tyler, warm clothes in his size, even a small television that someone had upgraded from. It wasn't charity, she realized. It was community. People taking care of each other because that's what people did. "How do I thank everyone?" "You don't need to thank anyone. Just pay it forward when you can. That's how it works." That evening, as they ate Mrs. Rodriguez's casserole at their kitchen table in their new home, Tyler announced that he liked the apartment better than their old house. "It's cozier," he said. "And I can hear you moving around, so I know you're still here." The comment revealed more about his anxieties than Jasmine had realized. Of course he needed to know she was there. His father had disappeared without warning. Why wouldn't he worry that she might do the same? "I'm not going anywhere, Tyler. Even when you can't hear me, I'm still here. Promise." "Promise." The next few weeks fell into a new routine. Jasmine had increased her hours at the community center to full-time, taking on additional responsibilities in exchange for a small raise. It wasn't enough to make them comfortable, but it was enough to pay rent and buy groceries and keep the lights on. For now, that was sufficient. Tyler adapted to his new environment with remarkable ease. He made friends with the children in the apartment complex, a diverse group of kids whose families were all working hard to get by. They played in the courtyard after school while their parents watched from windows and porches, creating an informal support network that reminded Jasmine of the neighborhood where she had grown up. Patricia called with updates on the divorce proceedings. David's lawyer had been unresponsive to initial attempts at contact, which wasn't surprising given that David was avoiding any accountability for his actions. But Patricia had discovered additional assets that might be recoverable, including a vacation property in North Carolina that David had apparently forgotten to hide. "We're also pursuing charges for identity theft and fraud," Patricia explained. "He used your information to access accounts and move money without your knowledge or consent. Even if he's in Spain, that doesn't mean he's beyond the reach of consequences." The idea of David facing actual legal consequences for what he had done was satisfying in a way that surprised Jasmine. She had spent so much energy on survival that she hadn't allowed herself to think about justice. But now, with some stability established, she found herself wanting more than just recovery. She wanted accountability. What are the chances of actually getting any money back? Better than I thought initially. Your husband was smart about hiding assets, but he was sloppy about covering his tracks. We have evidence of fraud that should hold up in court, and some of his assets are still within our jurisdiction. That weekend, Jasmine decided to take Tyler on a small adventure. They had been so focused on adjusting to their new life that they hadn't done anything just for fun. She packed a picnic lunch and drove to a lake about an hour outside the city, a place she remembered visiting as a child with her own parents. Tyler was enchanted by the water and the ducks and the families having barbecues at the picnic tables. They rented a paddle boat and spent an hour floating around the small lake, Tyler trailing his fingers in the water and pointing out fish and turtles. It was the first time since David left that Jasmine felt truly relaxed, not thinking about bills or lawyers or what crisis might be waiting for them at home. "This is the best day we've had in a long time," Tyler announced as they shared sandwiches at a picnic table overlooking the water. "Why do you think that is?" "Because we're just having fun. We're not worried about anything." Out of the mouths of babes. Jasmine realized that she had been so consumed with managing their crisis that she had forgotten to make room for joy. Tyler needed more than just survival from her. He needed to see that their new life could include happiness and adventure and moments of simple pleasure. On the drive home, Tyler fell asleep in the back seat, and Jasmine found herself thinking about the future in concrete terms for the first time. Where did she want to be in a year? In 5 years? What kind of life did she want to build for herself and Tyler? She wanted stability, obviously. Financial security. A home they owned rather than rented. But she also wanted more than just recovery from David's betrayal. She wanted to build something better than what they had lost. Something that was entirely theirs, that no one could take away from them. That night, after Tyler was asleep, she sat at her laptop and began researching online college programs. She had dropped out of school when Tyler was born, choosing to focus on being a mother and supporting David's career. But now she needed a career of her own, something that could provide real financial security and independence. The community college offered an associate degree program in business administration that she could complete mostly online, with some evening classes. It would take 2 years working around her job and Tyler's schedule, but it was doable. More importantly, it was a step toward a future where she would never again be dependent on someone else for her security. She filled out the application that night, her first concrete step toward building the life she wanted rather than just surviving the life she had been given. It felt significant, like drawing a line in the sand between her old life and whatever came next. When she went to bed, she was thinking about textbooks and class schedules and what she might want to do with a business degree. For the first time since David left, she fell asleep planning instead of worrying. It was a small shift, but it felt like everything. The acceptance letter from the community college arrived on a Tuesday morning that had started like any other. Jasmine read it twice before the words sank in, then called Mrs. Rodriguez with the news before she even finished her coffee. "I'm so proud of you," Mrs. Rodriguez said, and Jasmine could hear the smile in her voice. "This is exactly what you need to build a real future for yourself and Tyler." Tyler was equally excited when she told him that evening. "You're going to be a student like me," he announced as if this was the most natural thing in the world. "Can I help you with your homework? I think I'm going to need all the help I can get." Classes wouldn't start for another month, which gave Jasmine time to arrange her work schedule and figure out childcare for the evenings when she would be on campus. Mrs. Rodriguez offered to watch Tyler during her evening classes, and several of the other parents in their apartment complex volunteered to help with pickup and drop-off duties. The informal support network that had developed around their building was becoming more valuable than Jasmine had imagined possible. Meanwhile, Patricia had news about the legal proceedings. "We've located the vacation property in North Carolina," she reported during their monthly phone call. "David tried to transfer ownership to an LLC, but he made some procedural errors that we can challenge. If we're successful, we could force a sale and recover a significant portion of what he stole." "How significant?" "Potentially enough to put you in a very different financial position. The property is worth about $200,000, and if we can prove fraud in the transfer, you could be entitled to half of that as part of the divorce settlement." $100,000. It was more money than Jasmine had ever imagined having at one time. Not enough to make her wealthy, but enough to change everything. Enough to buy a small house instead of renting. Enough to finish school without working full-time. Enough to give Tyler opportunities she had thought were lost forever. What's the timeline on this? These things move slowly, especially with David avoiding service in Spain. But we're making progress. I'm cautiously optimistic. That evening, Jasmine allowed herself to imagine what their life might look like with that kind of financial stability. She could cut back her hours at work and focus more on school. They could move to a better apartment, maybe even a small house with a yard where Tyler could play. She could stop worrying about every penny and start planning for Tyler's future education. But she also tried not to get her hopes up too high. David had already proven that he was capable of sophisticated financial manipulation. There was no guarantee that his assets would still be recoverable by the time the legal system caught up with him. A week later, Tyler came home from school with a black eye and scraped knuckles. Jasmine's first instinct was panic, followed immediately by anger. What happened? Who did this to you? Jeremy Patterson said his dad told him that my dad ran away because he didn't want us anymore, Tyler explained, his voice matter-of-fact despite the evidence of violence on his face. I told him that wasn't true and he said it was, so I punched him. Jasmine's heart broke and soared at the same time. Broken because her 5-year-old was having to defend their family's honor on the playground. Soaring because he was strong enough to stand up for himself and for her. Did you get in trouble at school? Mrs. Patterson made us both apologize and sit in the quiet corner. She said fighting doesn't solve problems, but sometimes people say mean things when they don't understand what's really happening. Mrs. Patterson, Jeremy's mother and Tyler's teacher, had clearly handled the situation with wisdom and compassion. But it made Jasmine realize that Tyler was dealing with more fallout from David's abandonment than she had understood. Other children talked about what their parents said at home, and not all of it was kind or accurate. That night, she had a long conversation with Tyler about dealing with people who said hurtful things. Some people don't understand our situation, she explained. They make up stories to explain things they don't know about. That doesn't make the stories true. But what if they keep saying it? Then you tell a teacher and you tell me and we figure out how to handle it together. You don't have to fight everyone who says something stupid, Tyler. You just have to know the truth about who we are. What's the truth about who we are? Jasmine thought about that question for a moment. We're a family. We take care of each other. We work hard and we're kind to people and we don't give up when things get difficult. That's who we are. And Daddy? Daddy made choices that hurt us. That's about him, not about us. The playground incident made Jasmine more aware of the social dynamics Tyler was navigating. Most of the other children in his class came from traditional two-parent households, and Tyler's situation made him different in ways that some kids didn't know how to process. She made a mental note to talk to Mrs. Patterson about how to help Tyler navigate these challenges. A few days later, she got an unexpected phone call at work. The caller ID showed a number she didn't recognize, but when she answered, the voice was unfortunately familiar. Jasmine, it's David. Her entire body went cold. She stepped outside the community center into the parking lot, needing privacy for whatever this conversation was going to bring. What do you want? I heard you're trying to cause problems with the divorce. My lawyer says you're making claims about fraud and theft. I'm making claims about theft because you stole from us, David. You cleaned out our accounts and left us with nothing. I took what was mine. You're not entitled to half of everything just because we were married. The casual cruelty in his voice was breathtaking. This was the man she had loved for 7 years, the father of her child, and he was talking to her like she was a stranger trying to con him out of money. Tyler asks about you, she said, not sure why she was telling him this. He wants to know when you're coming back. There was silence on the other end of the line, and for a moment she thought he might say something human, something that acknowledged that he had a son who missed him. Tell him I'm not coming back. It's better for everyone if he understands that. You're his father. I'm starting a new life, Jasmine. I can't be tied down by old obligations. Old obligations. That's what Tyler was to him now. An old obligation. Drop the legal action, David continued. You're not going to win and you're just wasting money you don't have. Accept the divorce terms and move on with your life. No. No. I said no. You don't get to steal everything and then demand that I make it easy for you. You want a divorce? Fine. But you're going to pay for what you did to us. Jasmine, be reasonable. You can't afford to fight me on this. Watch me. She hung up before he could respond, her hands shaking with anger and adrenaline. The audacity of him calling to demand that she stop pursuing what was rightfully hers was staggering. But underneath the anger was something else, satisfaction. For the first time since he left, she had stood up to him. She had said no and meant it. That evening, she called Patricia to report the conversation. He's worried, Patricia observed. People don't make calls like that unless they know they're in trouble. This is actually good news for us. How is it good news that my ex-husband thinks he can intimidate me into dropping legal action? Because it means our case is strong enough to worry him. If he thought he was completely protected by being in Spain, he wouldn't bother trying to talk you out of pursuing him. The phone call from David had an unexpected effect on Jasmine's motivation. Instead of intimidating her, it energized her. She threw herself into her preparations for starting school, ordering textbooks and setting up a study space in the corner of her bedroom. She researched scholarship opportunities and financial aid programs. She made detailed schedules that would allow her to balance work, school, and parenting. Tyler was fascinated by her textbooks when they arrived, flipping through the pages and asking questions about business and accounting. "Will you be the boss of people when you finish school?" he asked. "I might be. Or I might start my own business. Or I might do something completely different. The point is that I'll have choices. I want to have choices too when I grow up." "You will, baby. That's what we're working toward." The first day of classes arrived sooner than Jasmine had expected. She dropped Tyler off at Mrs. Rodriguez's house after dinner, kissed him goodbye, and drove to the community college campus with a mixture of excitement and terror churning in her stomach. It had been 6 years since she had been a student, and she wasn't sure she remembered how to learn in a classroom setting. Her first class was Introduction to Business, taught by a professor who looked younger than she was and spoke with the kind of enthusiasm that suggested he genuinely loved his subject. Looking around the classroom, Jasmine realized that most of her classmates were closer to her age than to traditional college age. Single mothers, career changers, people who were rebuilding their lives for various reasons. She wasn't the only one starting over. The professor assigned seats alphabetically, and Jasmine found herself sitting next to a woman named Carmen who was about her age and had the tired but determined look of someone juggling multiple responsibilities. "First time back in school?" Carmen asked during the break. 6 years. "You?" 10. "I'm finally finishing the degree I started before my kids were born." "Better late than never, right?" They exchanged phone numbers and agreed to study together, the beginning of what would become a crucial friendship. Carmen understood the challenges of being a single mother in school in ways that younger classmates couldn't, and her practical attitude was exactly what Jasmine needed. After class, Jasmine sat in her car in the parking lot for a few minutes before driving home, processing what had just happened. She was a college student again. She was building a future that had nothing to do with David or what he had taken from them. For the first time in months, she felt proud of herself instead of just grateful to be surviving. When she picked Tyler up from Mrs. Rodriguez's house, he was full of questions about her first day of school. She told him about her classmates and her professor and the assignment she had to complete before the next class. "Are you excited?" he asked as they walked up the stairs to their apartment. "I'm terrified and excited at the same time. That's how I felt on my first day of kindergarten. But it turned out to be really fun. I hope my first day turns out to be really fun too." That night, as she worked on her first assignment while Tyler did his homework at the kitchen table, Jasmine felt something she hadn't experienced in a long time. Hope for the future that was based on her own actions rather than on someone else's decisions. She was building something that belonged to her, something that no one could take away. It was a good feeling. It was the beginning of everything. 3 months into the semester, Jasmine's life had developed a rhythm that was exhausting but satisfying. Her days started at dawn with breakfast and getting Tyler ready for school, followed by 8 hours at the community center, then rushing to campus for evening classes twice a week. The other nights were spent studying while Tyler did homework beside her. Both of them bent over books at the kitchen table like two students working toward their respective futures. Her grades were excellent, which surprised her. She had been worried that 6 years away from academic work would have dulled her ability to learn, but the opposite seemed to be true. Having real-world experience and genuine motivation made the coursework more meaningful than it had been when she was 18 and taking classes because that's what was expected of her. Carmen had become a true friend, someone who understood the juggling act of single motherhood and school in ways that other people couldn't. They studied together when they could arrange childcare, quizzed each other over the phone after their kids were asleep, and provided moral support during the inevitable moments when everything felt overwhelming. "How do you do it?" Carmen asked one evening as they worked through accounting problems at the library while their children played in the children's section under the watchful eye of a librarian who had become accustomed to their routine. "Do what?" "Stay positive. Keep moving forward. Most people in our situation would be bitter and angry all the time." Jasmine thought about that question. She was angry, sometimes furiously so, especially when Tyler asked questions about his father that she couldn't answer without lying. But the anger wasn't the dominant emotion anymore. "I think I'm too busy to be bitter," she said finally. "And Tyler needs me to be okay, so I have to be okay. It's more than that though. You seem genuinely happy sometimes." "I'm happy sometimes. Not about what David did but about what we're building now. This life we have, it's ours. Nobody can take it away from us. The conversation stayed with Jasmine as she drove home that night. Carmen was right that she had found a kind of happiness in their new life, but it wasn't the contentment she had felt in her marriage. It was something more active and intentional, built on her own choices rather than on someone else's promises. Patricia called the next week with significant news. "We've successfully challenged the transfer of the North Carolina property," she announced without preamble. "The judge ruled that David's attempt to hide the asset constituted fraud, and he's ordered a sale with proceeds to be held in escrow pending final divorce settlement." What does that mean in practical terms? It means we're going to recover that money. The property will be sold, and you'll receive your share as part of the divorce settlement. Based on current market conditions, you're looking at approximately $90,000. $90,000. The number was life-changing in ways that Jasmine was still trying to process. It wasn't enough to make her wealthy, but it was enough to buy a small house, to reduce her work hours so she could focus more on school, to stop worrying about every penny they spent on groceries. When will this happen? The property is already listed for sale. These things usually move quickly, especially if it's priced competitively. You could see the money within the next few months. That evening, Jasmine sat Tyler down for a conversation about their future. "We might be able to buy our own house soon," she told him. "A place that belongs to us, where we can paint the walls any color we want and plant flowers in the yard." Tyler's eyes went wide. "Our own house? With stairs?" "Maybe with stairs. What else would you want in our house?" "A big kitchen where we can cook together. And a backyard where I can play with my friends. And a room where you can do your homework without me bothering you." "You don't bother me when I'm doing homework. I like having you there. But you might want your own space sometimes. Grown-ups need privacy for thinking." His consideration for her needs was touching and a little heartbreaking. He was growing up faster than she had wanted, taking on emotional responsibilities that should have been handled by adults. But he was also developing empathy and resilience that would serve him well throughout his life. "What kind of house do you think we should look for?" she asked. "Not too big. Big enough for us but not so big that it feels empty. And close to my school so I can still see my friends." They spent the evening looking at real estate websites, dreaming about possibilities that were suddenly within reach. Tyler was fascinated by the photos and floor plans, asking questions about square footage and property taxes that made Jasmine realize he was absorbing more about their financial situation than she had thought. A few days later, she got another unexpected phone call, this time from David's sister Rebecca in California. Not the Rebecca he had run away with, but his sister Rebecca, who had always been kind to Jasmine during the marriage. "I just heard what David did," Rebecca said, her voice tight with anger. "I cannot believe he left you and Tyler like that. I'm so sorry, Jasmine." "Thank you. That means a lot. I want you to know that not everyone in David's family supports what he did. My parents are horrified. They've been trying to reach him to make him come back and face his responsibilities, but he won't take their calls. He called me a few months ago to try to get me to drop the legal action against him. Good for you for not backing down. He needs to be held accountable for what he did." The conversation was surprisingly healing. Jasmine had assumed that David's family would either support his actions or simply not want to get involved. Learning that they were appalled by his behavior helped her feel less isolated, less like she was the only one who thought what he had done was wrong. "If there's anything we can do to help," Rebecca continued, "please let us know. My parents want to maintain a relationship with Tyler if you're comfortable with that. They know they can't make up for David's behavior, but they love Tyler and they want to be part of his life. I think Tyler would like that. He asks about his grandparents sometimes." They arranged for David's parents to visit the following month, a development that Tyler greeted with excitement and anticipation. He had always been close to his paternal grandparents, and their continued presence in his life would help fill some of the void left by his father's abandonment. The visit went better than Jasmine had hoped. David's parents, Robert and Ellen, were warm and loving with Tyler and respectful toward Jasmine. They didn't try to defend David's actions or make excuses for him. Instead, they apologized for their son's behavior and promised to remain involved in Tyler's life regardless of what David chose to do. "We failed somewhere as parents," Ellen said quietly while Tyler showed his grandfather his school projects. "I don't know how we raised a son who could abandon his own child." "Tyler is not responsible for his father's choices," Jasmine replied. "And neither are you. We want to help if you'll let us. Not financially necessarily, though we're prepared to do that too. But emotionally. Tyler needs family connections and we want to be that for him." The relationship with David's parents became another source of stability in Tyler's life. They visited monthly, took him on small adventures, and maintained the connection to his father's family that David himself had severed. Their presence also validated Jasmine's belief that David's abandonment was about his own failings, not about anything she or Tyler had done wrong. By the end of the semester, Jasmine had earned a 3.8 GPA and was beginning to think about what she wanted to specialize in for her second year. Her accounting professor had suggested she consider pursuing a bachelor's degree in business administration after completing her associate degree, a possibility that had seemed impossible just a year ago but was now beginning to feel achievable. The North Carolina property sold in December, and Patricia called with the news that the escrow account was ready to be released. "Congratulations," she said. "You're about to receive a check for $87,000. $87,000. It was slightly less than the original estimate, but it was still more money than Jasmine had ever possessed at one time. It was freedom and security and opportunity all rolled into a single number that represented her successful fight against David's attempt to leave them with nothing. "What's next?" she asked Patricia. "The divorce will be finalized within the next few weeks. David's attempts to avoid service have failed, and the court is prepared to grant the divorce in absentia based on abandonment. You'll be officially free of him soon." That night, Jasmine took Tyler out to dinner at a restaurant that was nicer than anywhere they had been since moving to the apartment. Not expensive, but nice enough to feel like a celebration. Tyler dressed up for the occasion, wearing his best shirt and combing his hair carefully. "What are we celebrating?" he asked as they looked at their menus. "We're celebrating that we made it. We survived everything that happened to us, and we built a new life that's better than our old one. Are you happy, Mama?" "I'm very happy. Are you happy?" "I'm happy that we're a team. I'm happy that you're going to school. I'm happy that we might get our own house. I'm a little sad that Daddy isn't here, but I'm not sad about everything else. I think that's exactly how you should feel." As they shared dessert, Jasmine looked at her son and felt a surge of pride that had nothing to do with the money they had recovered or the house they might buy. Tyler was thriving despite everything that had happened to them. He was kind and resilient and optimistic, qualities that would serve him well regardless of what challenges lay ahead. More importantly, he was happy. Not in spite of their circumstances, but because of what they had built together. They had taken the worst thing that had ever happened to them and turned it into the foundation for something better. That felt like victory in ways that went far beyond money or legal settlements. It felt like revenge of the best possible kind, living well despite everything David had done to try to destroy them. House hunting with Tyler turned out to be more entertaining than Jasmine had expected. He approached each potential home with the seriousness of a professional inspector, testing light switches, opening and closing cabinet doors, and asking questions about things like water pressure and heating bills that made real estate agents do double takes. "This kitchen is too small for us to cook together," he announced in the third house they toured, a small ranch with an updated bathroom but a cramped galley kitchen. "And there's no good place for Mama to do her homework." Linda Carter, their real estate agent, had quickly learned to take Tyler's opinions seriously. "He has excellent instincts," she told Jasmine after Tyler rejected a house because the backyard had no shade trees. "Kids often notice things adults miss because they think about how they'll actually live in a space." The house they finally fell in love with was a small two-story colonial in a neighborhood that was transitioning from working class to middle class, with tree-lined streets and sidewalks where children rode bikes and drew chalk pictures. It had 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and a kitchen that opened into a family room where Tyler could do homework while Jasmine cooked dinner. "This feels like home," Tyler announced after walking through it twice, and Jasmine knew he was right. The house had good bones and enough space for them to grow into, with a fenced backyard where Tyler could play and a small office upstairs where she could study without distractions. The asking price was within their budget, especially with the settlement money from David's hidden property. Jasmine made an offer that was accepted within 24 hours, and suddenly they were homeowners, a concept that still felt surreal weeks later when they signed the closing papers. Moving day was organized chaos, with Carmen and her kids helping pack, Mrs. Rodriguez bringing sandwiches for everyone, and several of their neighbors from the apartment complex pitching in to load boxes into the rented moving truck. Tyler directed traffic like a small general, making sure his belongings were handled carefully and that everyone knew where things should go in the new house. "This is the best day ever," he announced as they carried the last box up the front steps of their new home. "We own a house, Mama. Nobody can make us leave." That first night in their own house, they slept on air mattresses in the living room because their furniture hadn't been delivered yet. Tyler thought it was the greatest adventure, like camping indoors. They ate pizza sitting on the floor and planned how they would arrange each room. "Can I pick the color for my bedroom?" Tyler asked. Within reason. What color were you thinking? Blue. Like the sky but not too light. And maybe we could put up some shelves for my books and my rock collection. I think we can make that happen. The spring semester started 2 weeks after they moved in, and Jasmine found that having her own study space made an enormous difference in her ability to focus. The small office upstairs became her sanctuary, where she could spread out her textbooks and work on assignments without having to clear everything away for dinner or bedtime routines. Tyler was fascinated by the process of making the house theirs. They painted his bedroom the exact shade of blue he had envisioned, installed the shelves for his collections and hung his artwork on the walls. In the kitchen, they created a command center with a calendar for tracking school events and work schedules, a bulletin board for important papers, and a designated homework station at the island where Tyler could work while she prepared meals. The backyard became Tyler's domain. He planted seeds in a small garden patch, learned to use the sprinkler system, and discovered that the large oak tree in the corner was perfect for climbing. His friends from the apartment complex came to visit, marveling at the idea of having their own yard and house. Patricia called in March with news that the divorce had been finalized. You're officially a single woman, she announced. David's parental rights remain intact technically, but given that he's made no effort to contact Tyler or provide support, you have full custody and decision-making authority. What about child support? We have a judgment for support, but collecting it will be difficult as long as he's in Spain. If he ever returns to the United States or has assets here that we can locate, we can pursue collection. For now, though, you should plan as if you won't receive anything from him. It was disappointing but not surprising. Jasmine had learned not to count on David for anything, including basic decency toward his own son. But she had also learned that she didn't need him. The settlement from the hidden property, combined with her increasing earnings and the stability of homeownership, had given them a solid financial foundation. More importantly, Tyler was thriving in ways that might not have been possible if David had remained in their lives. He was developing independence and resilience, learning to value relationships based on consistency and kindness rather than just blood ties. His grandparents visited regularly, providing loving adult male presence that filled some of the gap left by his father's absence. The spring brought another unexpected development, a job offer. The community center where Jasmine worked had received a grant to expand their educational programs, and they offered her a position as program coordinator with a significant salary increase and benefits. We want someone who understands our community and has experience with program development, Mrs. Rodriguez explained. Your work with the senior computer classes has been outstanding, and your business education gives you skills we need as we expand. The job would mean more responsibility but also more flexibility. She could arrange her schedule around her classes and Tyler's school events, and the salary increase would make it possible for her to reduce her course load and focus more intensively on her studies. I'll need to maintain my class schedule, Jasmine said during the job interview with the board of directors. We're counting on it, the board chairman replied. We want someone who's committed to professional development and continuing education. Your degree program is an asset, not a liability. That evening, she and Tyler celebrated the job offer with ice cream sundaes and a movie night. Tyler was proud of her success in ways that made her realize how much he had been affected by watching her work toward her goals. You're really good at making things better, he told her as they cleaned up their ice cream bowls. When Daddy left, everything was bad. But you made it good again. We made it good, Tyler. We did it together. But you were the one who knew what to do. You got us the apartment and you went back to school and you found us this house. You figured everything out. His faith in her capabilities was both touching and slightly terrifying. She was still figuring things out as she went along, still making mistakes and learning from them. But Tyler saw competence and strength where she often felt uncertainty and fear. I'm still learning, you know. I don't always know what to do. But you always figure it out. That's what makes you a good mama. The summer break from classes gave Jasmine time to settle into her new job and to focus on making their house truly feel like home. They painted the living room a warm yellow that made the space feel larger and brighter. They planted flowers in the front yard and vegetables in Tyler's garden. They hosted a barbecue for their friends from the apartment complex, showing off their new space and maintaining the relationships that had sustained them through the difficult months. Carmen and her kids became regular visitors, often staying for dinner after study sessions. Mrs. Rodriguez adopted them as honorary family, bringing homemade meals when Jasmine was overwhelmed with work and school responsibilities. Even David's parents became part of their extended support network, helping with childcare and providing the kind of family stability that Tyler needed. One evening in July, Tyler asked a question that Jasmine had been expecting but dreading. Do you think Daddy will ever come back? I don't know, sweetie. What do you think? I think he won't. I think he likes his new life better than he liked us. How does that make you feel? Tyler was quiet for a long moment, considering the question with the seriousness he brought to all important matters. Sad sometimes. But not as sad as I used to be. And I'm not mad anymore. Why aren't you mad anymore? Because if he came back now, everything would be different. We have our house and our friends and our life. If he came back, we might have to change everything to make room for him. And I like our life the way it is. His insight was remarkable for a 6-year-old, but it reflected the emotional growth he had experienced over the past year. He had processed his father's abandonment and had come to understand that David's leaving had created space for better things to enter their lives. I like our life the way it is too, Jasmine told him. We built something good together. Are you ever sad about Daddy? Sometimes I'm sad that he hurt us. But I'm not sad that it's just you and me. I love being your mama, and I love the life we've built together. That night, after Tyler was asleep, Jasmine sat in her office looking at family photos from before David left. She felt no desire to return to that life even if it were possible. The woman in those photos had been dependent on someone else's choices for her security and happiness. The woman she was now had built her own life, made her own choices, created her own stability. It had taken David's betrayal to teach her that she was capable of far more than she had ever imagined. In trying to destroy her, he had actually freed her to become someone stronger and more independent than she had ever been while married to him. It was the best possible revenge, becoming happier without him than she had ever been with him. The beginning of Jasmine's second year of college brought new challenges and opportunities. She had decided to pursue a bachelor's degree in business administration, which meant transferring to the state university for her final 2 years. The course load was more demanding and the commute was longer, but her new position at the community center provided enough flexibility to make it manageable. Tyler, now in first grade, had adapted beautifully to their stable routine. He walked to school with neighborhood friends, spent afternoons at the community center's after-school program when Jasmine had evening classes, and had developed a social circle that included children from various backgrounds and family structures. Their unconventional family didn't make him stand out in ways that caused problems. Carmen had also transferred to the university, and they continued their study partnership, often working together in Jasmine's home office while their children played in the backyard. Their friendship had deepened beyond just academic support to genuine companionship, and Tyler had begun referring to Carmen's kids as his almost cousins. Have you thought about what you want to do after graduation? Carmen asked one evening as they worked through a particularly challenging economics assignment. I've been thinking about it a lot lately. Part of me wants to start my own business, but I'm not sure what kind. Part of me thinks I should get some experience working for someone else first, learn how things really work in the business world. What kind of business would you want to start? Jasmine had been mulling over this question for months. Her experience at the community center had shown her how much need there was for social services and educational programs, but also how limited the funding was for such work. Maybe something that combines business principles with community service? A consulting firm that helps nonprofit organizations improve their operations and sustainability. That sounds perfect for you. You understand both sides of it now. The idea had been forming gradually, shaped by her observations of the nonprofit world and her growing business education. Many community organizations had passionate, dedicated staff but lacked the business skills to operate efficiently or sustainably. There was a need for someone who could bridge that gap, someone who understood both the mission-driven nature of nonprofit work and the practical requirements of running a successful organization. Meanwhile, Tyler was developing interests and abilities that sometimes surprised her. His teacher, Mrs. Kim, requested a conference to discuss his advanced reading level and his aptitude for mathematics. Tyler is performing significantly above grade level in several areas, she explained. We'd like to discuss options for enrichment and acceleration. What kind of options? There are several paths we could explore. Gifted and talented programs, grade acceleration in specific subjects, or placement in a magnet school that specializes in advanced academics. He's clearly capable of more challenging work. Jasmine felt a mixture of pride and concern. She wanted Tyler to be challenged and engaged, but she also worried about putting too much pressure on him or isolating him from his peer group. What do you think would be best for him socially and emotionally? That's the right question to ask. Tyler is mature for his age, but he's still 6 years old. I'd recommend starting with enrichment activities within his current classroom and seeing how he responds. We can always explore other options later. The conversation with Mrs. Kim reminded Jasmine that Tyler's future held possibilities she had never considered. College had always been an assumption for him, but now she was thinking about which colleges, which programs, which opportunities they should be preparing for. The financial stability they had achieved meant that his options weren't limited by immediate economic concerns. That weekend, she sat down with Tyler to talk about school and what he enjoyed most about learning. His answers revealed a thoughtful, curious child who was excited about knowledge for its own sake. "I like math because there are always right answers," he explained. "And I like reading because stories help you understand how other people think. And I like science because you get to figure out how things work." "What do you want to be when you grow up?" "I used to want to be a firefighter. But now I think maybe I want to be a teacher or a scientist. Or maybe someone who helps people solve problems." "Those are all good choices. You don't have to decide now, you know. You have lots of time to figure out what you want to do." "I know. But it's fun to think about it." In October, Jasmine received an unexpected phone call from Patricia Chin. "I have some interesting news about David," she said. "He's been arrested in Spain." Jasmine's first reaction was a complicated mixture of satisfaction and concern. Arrested for what? Tax evasion and fraud, apparently related to his business dealings there. The Spanish authorities are investigating his finances, and they've discovered some irregularities that go beyond what he did to you. Does this affect our situation at all? It might. If he has assets in Spain that are subject to seizure, and if we can prove that those assets were acquired with money he stole from you, we might be able to recover additional funds. It's a long shot, but it's possible. The idea that David might finally face consequences for his actions was deeply satisfying, even though Jasmine had long since stopped needing his money for their day-to-day survival. They had built a good life without him, and any additional recovery would be a bonus rather than a necessity. More importantly, his legal troubles validated her decision to fight his attempts to steal everything they had built together. She had been right to refuse his demands that she drop the legal action. She had been right to insist on accountability. What happens next? We wait and see how his case develops. I'll monitor the situation and let you know if there are opportunities for us to intervene. In the meantime, you should continue living your life as if this won't amount to anything. If it does, it will be a pleasant surprise. That evening, Jasmine told Tyler about his father's arrest in the most age-appropriate way she could manage. "Your daddy is in some trouble with the law in Spain," she explained. "He made some bad choices about money, and now he has to face the consequences. Will he have to come back here? I don't think so. He'll probably have to stay in Spain to deal with his problems there." Tyler absorbed this information with the same serious consideration he gave to most adult topics. "Are you happy that he's in trouble?" It was a perceptive question, and Jasmine tried to answer it honestly. "I'm not happy that anyone is in trouble. But I am glad that there are consequences when people make bad choices. It's important that people can't just hurt others and walk away without any responsibility. Will this change anything for us?" "No, sweetie. Our life will stay exactly the same. We don't need anything from your daddy to be happy and safe." "Good. I like our life the way it is." The news about David's arrest provided a sense of closure that Jasmine hadn't realized she needed. For so long, she had carried anger about his escape from accountability, his ability to start over while leaving them to deal with the consequences of his actions. Learning that his choices had finally caught up with him felt like justice, even if it didn't directly benefit them. But more importantly, it confirmed that she had made the right choice in refusing to be a victim of his betrayal. She had fought back, built a new life, and created security and happiness for herself and Tyler. David's current troubles were just external validation of what she already knew, that people who try to destroy others often end up destroying themselves. The semester continued with its familiar rhythm of classes, work, and family time. Jasmine's grades remained excellent, and her professors began encouraging her to consider graduate school after completing her bachelor's degree. The idea was appealing but seemed premature to consider seriously. Tyler's enrichment activities at school were going well, and he was thriving socially as well as academically. His friendship group was diverse and stable, and he had developed leadership qualities that made him popular with both children and adults. Their house had become a gathering place for neighborhood families, with impromptu barbecues and holiday celebrations that brought together people from various backgrounds and circumstances. Jasmine found satisfaction in creating community, in being someone who brought people together rather than someone who isolated herself. As the year drew to a close, she reflected on how much their lives had changed since David's abandonment. What had seemed like the end of everything had actually been the beginning of something better. They had not just survived his betrayal, they had transformed it into the foundation for a stronger, more authentic life. Looking at Tyler, happy and confident and surrounded by people who loved him, Jasmine felt a deep sense of accomplishment. She had not just provided for him materially, she had given him a model of resilience and determination that would serve him throughout his life. She had turned their greatest catastrophe into their greatest triumph. That felt like the most complete revenge possible. Not just surviving but thriving in ways that would never have been possible if David had stayed. The spring of Jasmine's junior year brought an opportunity she hadn't expected. An internship at a consulting firm that specialized in helping nonprofit organizations improve their operations and financial sustainability. It was exactly the kind of work she had been dreaming about, combining her business education with her passion for community service. The internship was unpaid, but the experience would be invaluable, and her job at the community center provided enough flexibility for her to manage both responsibilities. Tyler, now 7 and increasingly independent, was excited about his mother's new opportunity and proud to tell his friends that she was going to help organizations that helped people. Her supervisor at the consulting firm was a woman named Dr. Sarah Williams, who had built the company from nothing into a successful practice that worked with nonprofits across 3 states. During Jasmine's first week, Dr. Williams explained the philosophy behind their work. Most nonprofit leaders are passionate about their missions but lack business training, she said. They know how to serve their communities, but they struggle with things like strategic planning, financial management, and operational efficiency. Our job is to help them build sustainable organizations that can maximize their impact. Jasmine's first assignment was to analyze the operations of a food bank that was struggling with distribution logistics and volunteer management. The work required her to apply everything she had learned about business operations while understanding the unique constraints and challenges of nonprofit work. The project was fascinating and challenging in ways that confirmed her career direction. She found herself energized by the problem-solving aspects of the work and deeply satisfied by the potential impact on the community. The food bank served families like hers had been 2 years ago, and improving their efficiency meant more people would receive the help they needed. Tyler was fascinated by her work and often asked questions about the organizations she was helping. "So you're helping the people who help other people?" he asked one evening as she worked on a report at the kitchen table. "That's exactly right. By making these organizations work better, we can help them serve more people who need assistance. That's like being a helper's helper." "I never thought of it that way, but yes, that's exactly what it is." His simple way of describing her work reminded her why it mattered. She wasn't just analyzing spreadsheets and writing reports, she was contributing to a network of support that made their community stronger and more resilient. Meanwhile, Patricia called with updates on David's situation in Spain. "His legal troubles are more serious than we initially thought," she reported. "He's facing criminal charges for tax evasion and fraud, and the Spanish authorities have frozen his assets while they investigate. Does this help us in any way? Potentially. If they find evidence that his Spanish assets were acquired with money he stole from you, we might be able to file claims for recovery. It's complicated because it involves international law, but it's worth pursuing." How much time and effort would that require? Significant amounts of both. The question is whether it's worth it to you. You've built a good life without his money. Do you want to spend energy pursuing assets that might not be recoverable? Jasmine thought about that question for several days. Part of her wanted to pursue every possible avenue for holding David accountable for his actions. But another part of her recognized that she had moved beyond needing anything from him. Her life was full and satisfying, and chasing his money felt like keeping him connected to their story in ways that might not be healthy. "Let's monitor the situation," she finally told Patricia. "If opportunities arise that don't require major time or emotional investment from me, we can pursue them. But I don't want to organize my life around getting money from David. We've moved beyond that." "I think that's wise. You've already won the most important victory by building a successful life without him." Spring semester ended with Jasmine earning the highest grades of her college career and receiving recognition for her internship work. Dr. Williams offered her a part-time position with the consulting firm, with the understanding that she would transition to full-time work after graduation. "You have a natural talent for this work," Dr. Williams told her. "You understand both the business side and the mission side, which is rare. I'd like you to consider staying with us long-term, with the possibility of eventually becoming a partner in the firm." The offer was more than Jasmine had dared to hope for when she started college. It represented not just employment, but a career path that aligned with her values and interests, with potential for growth and leadership that would provide long-term financial security for her and Tyler. That summer they took their first real vacation since David left. Tyler had been asking to visit the ocean, so they drove to the coast for a week at a beach rental that Jasmine could finally afford without stress or guilt. Tyler was enchanted by the waves and the sand, spending hours building elaborate castles and collecting shells. "This is the best vacation ever," he announced on their third day as they walked along the beach at sunrise. "I never knew the ocean was so big." "What's your favorite part?" "Everything. But mostly that we get to do it together, just you and me." "Would you like it if other people came with us sometimes? Like Carmen and her kids or Grandma and Grandpa?" "That would be fun too. But I like having special time that's just ours." The vacation gave them both time to relax and reflect on how far they had come. 2 years ago, Jasmine had been broke and desperate, wondering how she would provide for Tyler's basic needs. Now she was planning a career that excited her, living in a house they owned, and able to give Tyler experiences and opportunities that would enrich his childhood. More importantly, they had both healed from the trauma of David's abandonment. Tyler rarely mentioned his father anymore, and when he did, it was without the sadness or confusion that had marked his early questions. He had accepted that his family consisted of the people who chose to be part of his life, not just those who shared his genetics. On their last day at the beach, Tyler asked a question that surprised her. "Mama, do you think you'll ever get married again?" "I don't know, sweetie. I haven't really thought about it." "Why do you ask?" "Some of my friends' moms have new husbands or boyfriends. I was just wondering if you wanted that." "How would you feel if I did want that someday?" Tyler considered the question with his usual seriousness. "I think it would be okay if it was someone really nice who liked both of us. But I wouldn't want you to marry someone just because you thought I needed a dad." "I don't need a dad. I have you and Grandpa Robert and Mr. Rodriguez from the community center. I have enough grown-ups who care about me." His emotional maturity continued to amaze her. At 7, he had a better understanding of healthy relationships than many adults she knew. David's abandonment had been traumatic, but it had also taught Tyler valuable lessons about the difference between people who made promises and people who kept them. "I'm not looking for anyone right now," she told him honestly. "I'm happy with our life the way it is. If that changes someday, we'll talk about it together. But you're right that you don't need a dad just to have a dad. You need people who love you and take care of you, and you already have plenty of those." "Good. I like our team the way it is." As they packed to leave the beach, Jasmine reflected on Tyler's question and her own feelings about the possibility of future relationships. For the first time since David left, she felt open to the idea that she might someday want to share her life with someone again. Not because she needed rescuing or financial support, but because she might choose to invite someone into the good life she had built. The difference was significant. She was no longer someone who needed to be saved. She was someone who had saved herself and might choose to share that strength with the right person at the right time. It was a healthier foundation for any future relationship than the dependence that had characterized her marriage to David. But for now, she was content with the life she and Tyler had created together. They had turned abandonment into independence, betrayal into strength, and loss into gain. Whatever the future held, they would face it as partners, secure in their ability to handle whatever challenges or opportunities came their way. The drive home was filled with Tyler's chatter about shells and waves and plans for their next adventure. Listening to his excitement and optimism, Jasmine felt a deep sense of satisfaction with the choices she had made and the life they were building together. They had not just survived David's betrayal. They had transformed it into the foundation for something better than anything they had lost. That was the sweetest revenge of all, becoming happier and stronger because of what he had tried to do to destroy them. The final year of Jasmine's college program arrived with a momentum that felt both exciting and surreal. She had been accepted into the honors program, was working part-time at the consulting firm, and had been approached by several companies about full-time positions after graduation. The scared, abandoned woman who had found David's note on the kitchen counter 3 years ago felt like someone from another lifetime. Tyler, now 8 and in 3rd grade, had grown into a confident, articulate child who moved through the world with the security that came from knowing he was loved and valued. His teachers consistently praised his academic performance, his kindness to other children, and his mature approach to problem-solving. The abandonment that could have destroyed his sense of self-worth had instead taught him to value the relationships that proved reliable and lasting. "I want to throw you a graduation party," Tyler announced one evening in February as Jasmine worked on her senior capstone project. "A big party with all our friends and family, to celebrate how hard you worked. That's very sweet of you to think of, but graduation isn't until May. I know. But I want to start planning now so it's perfect. Mrs. Rodriguez said she would help me, and Carmen said she would make a cake, and Grandma Ellen said she would come from California if we gave her enough notice. His enthusiasm for celebrating her achievement was touching and a little overwhelming. She had become so focused on simply completing her degree that she hadn't considered it something worth celebrating. But Tyler's excitement reminded her that her graduation represented far more than just finishing college. It symbolized their complete transformation from victims of abandonment to architects of their own success. What kind of party did you have in mind? A backyard barbecue with everyone who helped us. All the people who were there when we needed them. And maybe we could make a picture board showing all the things we did while you were in school, like when we moved into our house and when I learned to ride my bike and when you got the job at the consulting place. The idea of documenting their journey was appealing. They had been so busy living their new life that they hadn't taken time to appreciate how far they had traveled from those first desperate days in the empty house. I think that sounds perfect. Let's start planning your perfect graduation party. Spring semester brought the usual intensity of final projects and job interviews, but it also brought unexpected news from Patricia. David's case in Spain has taken an interesting turn, she reported during their quarterly check-in call. He's been convicted of tax evasion and sentenced to 5 years in prison. More importantly for us, the Spanish court has ordered restitution to his victims, which includes you. What does that mean in practical terms? It means you're entitled to compensation from the liquidation of his Spanish assets. The amount is still being determined, but initial estimates suggest you could receive anywhere from $50,000 to $100,000. The news was startling after so long without expecting anything from David's situation. When would this happen? These international asset recovery cases move slowly, but probably within the next year or two. The Spanish authorities are being very thorough in their investigation, which works in your favor. Will I need to do anything? Just wait. I'll handle all the paperwork and international coordination. You should continue living your life as if this money doesn't exist. If and when it materializes, it will be a bonus rather than something you're counting on. That evening, Jasmine shared the news with Tyler, who received it with the same practical attitude he brought to most adult information. So Daddy is in jail in Spain and we might get some money from the bad things he did? That's right. But it doesn't change anything about our daily life or our plans. Good. I don't want to change our plans. I like our plans. Tyler's response reinforced Jasmine's own feelings about the potential windfall. They had built a good life without David's money, and any additional funds would be invested in their future rather than used to change their present circumstances. The house was comfortable, Tyler's education was secure, and her career prospects were excellent. Additional money would provide extra security and opportunities, nothing more. The graduation party planning became a family project that involved Tyler, Carmen and her children, Mrs. Rodriguez, David's parents, and several neighbors who had become part of their extended community. Tyler took his role as event coordinator seriously, making lists and timelines and ensuring that every detail reflected his vision of the perfect celebration. This party isn't just about your graduation, he explained to Jasmine as they addressed invitations. It's about celebrating that we made it, that we turned out okay even after everything that happened. His insight into the deeper meaning of the celebration was remarkable for an 8-year-old, but it reflected the emotional intelligence he had developed through their shared experience of rebuilding their lives. He understood that her graduation represented their collective triumph over circumstances that could have destroyed them. Dr. Williams offered Jasmine a full-time position with a substantial salary increase and the promise of partnership track within 5 years. You've demonstrated exceptional skill and commitment during your internship, she explained during the job offer meeting. I believe you have the potential to eventually take over leadership of this firm, if that's something that interests you. The offer exceeded Jasmine's most optimistic expectations for her post-graduation prospects. It represented not just employment, but a career path that could provide financial security and professional fulfillment for decades to come. More importantly, it was work that aligned with her values and made a positive impact on her community. I'm honored by your confidence in me, Jasmine replied. Yes, I'm very interested in accepting the position. Excellent. I'm looking forward to working with you as a colleague rather than a supervisor. Graduation day arrived with perfect weather and a sense of anticipation that had been building for months. Tyler had insisted on wearing his best suit for the ceremony, and he carried himself with the pride of someone who had been an integral part of his mother's educational journey. As Jasmine walked across the stage to receive her diploma, she looked out at the audience and saw Tyler on his feet, clapping enthusiastically beside David's parents, Carmen and her children Mrs. Rodriguez and several other friends who had supported them throughout her college years. The sight of their community gathered to celebrate her achievement was more meaningful than the diploma itself. After the ceremony, Tyler ran to her with a hug that nearly knocked her over. "I'm so proud of you, Mama. You did it. We did it, Tyler. We did it together." The graduation party that weekend was everything Tyler had envisioned and more. The backyard was filled with people who had been part of their journey from abandonment to success, sharing food and stories and celebrating not just Jasmine's educational achievement but their collective triumph over adversity. Carmen gave a toast that brought tears to everyone's eyes. 3 years ago, Jasmine was starting over with nothing but courage and determination. Today she's graduating with honors, starting a career she loves, and raising a son who is proof that children can thrive in families built on love rather than convention. She didn't just survive what happened to her family. She used it as the foundation to build something better. Tyler had prepared his own speech, which he delivered with the seriousness he brought to all important occasions. "My mama is the strongest person I know," he said, standing on a chair so everyone could see him. "When my daddy left us, she could have been sad and given up. Instead, she went to school and got us a house and made sure I knew I was safe and loved. She taught me that families are about the people who choose to take care of each other, not just the people you're related to. Everyone here is part of our family because you chose to help us when we needed it. Thank you for being our family." As the party wound down and guests began to leave, Tyler pulled Jasmine aside for a private conversation. "Mama, I have something important to tell you." "What's that, sweetie?" "I'm glad Daddy left." The statement was so unexpected that Jasmine wasn't sure how to respond. "What do you mean?" "I mean I'm glad he left because if he hadn't, we wouldn't have this life. We wouldn't have our house or your job or all these friends. We wouldn't be as strong as we are now. And I wouldn't know how brave and smart you are, because you never would have had to show me." Tyler's perspective on their experience was profound in ways that took her breath away. He had not just survived his father's abandonment, he had found meaning and value in it. He understood that their current happiness was not in spite of what David had done to them, but because of how they had responded to it. "You're right," she said, pulling him into a hug. "I'm glad too. Not glad that it hurt us, but glad that we found out how strong we could be." "And Mama?" "Yes. Even if Daddy came back tomorrow and said he was sorry and wanted to be part of our family again, I wouldn't want him to. This is our family now. The people who were here today, they're our real family. Daddy gave up his chance to be part of it when he chose to leave." That night, after Tyler was asleep and the last dishes from the party were cleaned and put away, Jasmine sat in her office looking at her diploma and thinking about the journey that had brought them to this moment. 3 years ago, she had been devastated by abandonment and betrayal. Tonight, she was surrounded by the evidence of love and community and success that had grown from the ashes of that devastation. David had intended to leave them with nothing. Instead, his betrayal had forced her to discover resources and strengths she had never known she possessed. His abandonment had created space in their lives for relationships and opportunities that never would have existed if he had stayed. His theft had motivated her to build financial independence that made her more secure than she had ever been while depending on his income. In trying to destroy them, he had actually freed them to become their best selves. Tyler was growing into a young man of remarkable character and resilience. She had discovered a career that combined her talents with her values and provided the security and satisfaction she had always wanted. They had built a community of chosen family that was stronger and more reliable than the biological connections David had severed. The final irony was that David, in his Spanish prison cell, had lost everything he thought he was gaining by abandoning them. His new life with his mistress had collapsed under the weight of his legal troubles. His freedom was gone. His assets were being seized to pay restitution to his victims. He had traded a family who loved him for a future that had turned out to be a mirage. Meanwhile, the family he had abandoned was thriving in ways that exceeded anything they had achieved while he was part of their lives. They had turned his worst betrayal into their greatest triumph. As Jasmine turned off the lights and headed upstairs to bed, she felt a deep sense of completion. The scared, desperate woman who had found that note on the kitchen counter was gone, replaced by someone strong and confident and independent. The confused, abandoned little boy was gone, replaced by a young man who understood his own worth and the value of authentic relationships. They had not just survived David's betrayal. They had transformed it into the foundation for a life that was richer, stronger, and more meaningful than anything they had lost. That was the ultimate revenge. becoming happier and more successful because of what he had tried to do to destroy them. The story that had begun with abandonment and betrayal had ended with triumph and transformation. They had written their own ending, and it was better than any revenge she could have imagined when the nightmare first began. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities, but they would face them together, secure in the knowledge